today, right, that we are starting is called image signal processing. That's the name of the course. And I'm Rajagopalan, right? I'm supposed to be taking this course for you. There will be, right, so as far as this course is concerned, right, it has a very strong lab component. Okay, it has a strong lab component, which means that you will be actually required to actually implement some of the things that I talk about here. This was one thing, right, to simply teach here, but then the other thing is that you go back and actually do this by yourself, right, implement the whole thing by yourself. That actually helps a lot. Okay, so books. A.K. Jain. This is a very old book, but I still like it. Okay, some of the it's a very solid book. Fundamentals of Digital Image Processing. Fundamentals of Digital Image Processing. All these are the Indian editions are available. Okay, so they're not expensive at all. But then I'm saying you don't need to purchase them. Then there is a Gonzalez and Woods, and this is again a good one. But then our sort of course content, right, is going to be spread across. So it doesn't mean that whatever I say is all there in these books and so on. It's just like I said, just if you want to have some kind of a mental comfort, digital, what is that, image processing, and then there is a reference book, which is a good one. This you don't even dare to buy this; it's too expensive. Al Bowick, The Essential Guide to Image Processing. Essential Guide to Image Processing. So one of the things that will happen is I'll cover topics from various areas, topics from these papers, from different papers will be covered. Topics from different papers will be covered. Okay, and wherever I can, I'll actually tell you the paper, so that for those of you who are interested, you can go back, read the paper, right, just in case you want to know more. You can always read those papers. Okay, and yeah, so with that, yeah, that sort of sets the tone. Okay, so now if you ask yourself, right, why should I be doing a course like this, or what can this course do for me, right, at the end of the semester? Okay, if you claim that you have done this course in image signal processing, right, what does it mean for you in terms of what you can do? What it can actually do for you is that you will have a working knowledge of ISP. Okay, let me just shift to the next page. Okay, so what will it do for you? So what will it do for you? So the idea is that, right, you will have a working knowledge in the sense that, right, you should be able to read a paper, implement things, and so on. So that initial psychological barrier, right, that let's say that students have, that what is this paper and how do I implement and so on. After you're done this course, you should feel absolutely at home, being able to having a working knowledge, right? So you'll have working knowledge, working knowledge of ISP. ISP is image processing, okay, or IP, okay, not intellectual property, IP, along with a firm grounding in fundamentals of ISP. Okay, so it's not just the implementation part, right? You also want to understand, right? So in fundamentals of again image processing. Okay. Now the next thing, right, that you might ask is, will this mean that I will know all about image processing? Will you know all about image processing? What do you think the answer is? Obviously no, right? No, but you would have learnt enough, right? But you would have learnt enough to be able to confidently read and understand. So you see, the idea is that, right, this is simply a basic course, right? Of course, there are advanced these concepts and all that. But the whole idea is that, right, once you do this course, you should be able to go there, take a journal, something like transactions and image processing or transactions PAMI or something, or a CVPR level conference paper, and be able to read it and feel that, right, you do understand it. Okay, that is what it will give you. Okay, so it's impossible to cover the entire thing under, this is a big umbrella, right? Image processing is a very, 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 very big umbrella, so it's impossible to cover all that is under that, right? But then what we will do will give you enough expertise in order to be able to pick any paper of your liking and be in this area and be able to read and understand, right? So confidently read papers and understand them. Because eventually, right, one should be able to read papers and all. I mean, that's why it's a kind of an advanced elective, right? It's not like a core. That's the whole idea. Behind an elective is that you should be able to understand and read, advanced papers, papers and understand them. And understand them. Then also, the other thing, right, that I actually like to do is, when I actually teach, I would also like to give you the interconnections. Okay, something you read somewhere, like for example, if you're doing an SVD, right, then what kind of interconnections that it might have with respect to, let's say, photometric stereo, or with respect to filtering, noise filtering, right, all those interconnections also, right, wherever appropriate, right, I'll try to explain so that you also understand the importance of why you're learning these things. And some of these things you'll also do, by the way, right? Also, you would have learned many relevant topics. And there you see interconnects. And there interconnects. Okay, then going on to the next thing, right, which will be like, why study this subject, right? I mean, so what is this? What is the importance of this subject as of today? So in the first class, right, I always try to give people an idea as to where all, okay, it's being applied today, because it's not true that all of you would already know probably where image processing gets applied and so on. But then these days, right, with the kind of cell phone usage that I see around, I'm sure the camera is one of the things that is probably most used, right? So I mean, I guess, but then if you think that it's only the camera that the sort of consumer camera, that is what probably gets used the most, image processing, that's where it gets used the most. That's not correct. Okay, so the idea is that things go beyond that. And of course, many of those are important today, because if you can translate something onto a consumer camera, it makes a lot more sense, because for the companies, right, it means a huge thing, right? Something like a face finding, right? It's been there for a long time now. Earlier and all, it was simply a theory, right? But then just took a few years for that to be available on a phone and so on, right? So similarly, any idea, right, that you feel that these people feel will get can get engineered and can be transported to a cell phone, right, means a lot, okay, for these companies. So why study image processing? So you've heard about the top 4 guys, right? What are those big guys? Google, Amazon, Facebook. And the fourth one could be Microsoft, Intel, or whatever, right? So all these big guys, right? Right? These are the people that, which are actually making waves, right? In terms of in this area, right? And there is, image processing, by which I mean it shares a kind of a blurred boundary with computer vision. Okay, because the sort of things that these people do, right, lies at somewhere the intersection of IP and CV. Okay, there is a computer vision, which is like a high level thing, image processing, which is typically considered to be a low level thing. But then many of these vehicles that you use to do image processing, right, directly feed into sort of a vision pipeline, right? Which is why you find that Google, Amazon, Facebook, and all, right, they're all actively doing this. Right, you have this shopping markets, right, where they feel that Amazon on the go or something. What is that called? Amazon Go, I think, right? Where you could simply walk into a shop and then you just shop around and then come out. Right, you don't have to interact with anyone, right? So it just finds out what all you took, and right, and you're on your way out. And Facebook, for example, the tag and all that it does so very automatically, right, knows them and who it is actually looking at and so on. So all these things we know that, right, there are these big guys that actually use all this, and there are the cell phone companies, right, that want to keep increasing the kinds of apps that they want to have on these phones and so on, right. Now, as far as we are concerned, right, now one thing, okay, which you should realize is all this kind of blowing up, right, which has happened in the last 5, 6, maybe 10 years, right? That all has to do with ML, this machine learning, deep learning, and so on. Okay, so for those of you who have already done a deep learning course, right, some of this might look actually elementary in the sense that you might wonder, oh, can I not implement the same thing now that I have learned deep learning, and therefore, right, why can't I simply use a sort of a deep network to do the same job? The answer is true, but then the point is, right, deep networks should be invoked only when you really need them. Okay, it's like saying that when there's a nice mathematical construct to a problem, you would rather solve it in that manner rather than go hope for some black box, right, for which you will do some training and all that. So the idea is that, in fact, right, I always suggest that it's a good idea to first do this and then do a deep learning course. But then in this institute, we can't really enforce that. So we get people that do deep learning, and then they do image processing. So for such people, right, it could actually come into their minds as to, could I not have done this with a simple deep network and so on. That is all true. But at the same time, you have to actually realize that a traditional way to actually examine image processing is still very nice, and there are so many nice things, right, that I think you should be aware of. A deep network can do whatever it can do, but then there's already the kind of physics, right? Physics of image formation is so fundamental, and that physics, right, you can't really afford to not know. And the idea is that people who have a background of deep learning as well as who have done a traditional image processing will be able to use a deep network much more effectively than somebody who simply uses the deep network without even having any knowledge about what the physics of image formation is, right? So the whole idea behind this course is that we will not go the deep learning way. Okay, that's not the goal at all. We will go with the fundamentals of image processing. And in the process, the hope is that even if you've done something like deep learning, you should actually be thinking about, how do I bring all this physics into play? Okay, now that I know deep learning, can I actually bring some of this physics into play in order to maybe reduce my training or whatever, right? Make things more efficient computationally, whatever, right? Reduce the number of variables the number of unknowns, and I see this one, right, deep network and so on. Okay, so in that sense, there's still an essential component. It doesn't mean that just because deep learning is a wave and all, it doesn't mean that we need to forget the past. Okay, it's all the more important that we understand that we are firmly grounded in the fundamentals of image processing.